Yeah, so I guess you're making a sacrifice one way or another, right? Maybe it's either sacrificing what you really want to do for a career, or maybe sacrificing the comfort of home, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, my family lives in Roseburg, Oregon, and Roseburg is great and amazing, but I could not do what I do there unless I worked full time at a church, which I don't anymore. And my end goal was never to work full time at a church. I love ministry and I love being part of the worship band and getting to be part of helping people kind of refuel week after week. But I know that I've always known that that's not
Yeah.
my, you know, what I'm wired for, my end game calling. I always knew that working with ensembles was, where my heart was and is. Um, and, but I can't do that in a rural town or a town that has not had the tradition of supporting arts to the level like they do up in Washington. And so, um, yeah,
Right.
one of the sacrifices of being in the arts for my context is that my family is an 8 hour drive away or a plane ride plus an hour of drive, so it's,
So then it sounds to me like some of the keys for you have been like, at first, being willing to relocate and to go where the work is. And second, maybe taking a variety of different types of jobs in the music world, but maybe not necessarily what your long term goal is. But like you said, maybe just getting your foot in the door, sort of, and just getting a start somehow, right? Working toward that, like, I guess I could say working toward that long term vision.
yeah, yeah.
But now you're doing a little bit of both, and that is super cool, I'd say.
Yeah, so I work part-time at the church. I left in 2017 because my conducting career was taking off full time and I was really feeling kind of being pulled away from the church work. And at the time the church wasn't really considering making my position part-time at all or dividing it up. So I said I took that as a sign of like, okay, well, it's time for me to step away. And so it's 2017 and I was at that point hired on by three different organizations kind of throughout Washington state to sort of make a full-time conducting schedule. And it's the same all over the world. There aren't really full-time conducting positions. Like, if you work at a university,
Mm,
you're a conductor, you're an educator, you're an administrator a lot of times. You're also like a guidance, career person for your students. So there isn't really such thing. There are very few positions that you can make a really decent living by having just one gig and in the conducting world, but it's true, I think, everywhere. Like, unless you're going to become like a world famous musician, which is like 0.01% of us, then, you have to be willing to do multiple jobs, which I think is more of a blessing than a curse. I think getting to work with in different capacities is keeps me fresh and it keeps my music theory challenged and it keeps my wits about me because I'm not just doing the same routine over and over.
I'm actually really interested in learning a bit more about that because you use the word stress and how, like, because I think of a potential career in music for anybody who's listening, and it just feels so risky to me. Like, you're always sort of, I'm not going to say hustling, but the truth is, you're constantly out there trying to make sure that you have work.
Yeah, it's an entrepreneurship. If you are going to be a musician, 99% of us have to, I would say, even if you have a full-time employer, like let's say a university person, right, where you're in the academia world, you still have to be an advocate for yourself when it comes time for raises, when it comes time for tenureship, when it comes time for explaining to administration why your ensemble or class size is less than the standard 60 students in Otherwise, your program's going to get cut. You're always fighting. And I think hustling is a great word. I wouldn't shy away from using that word because it is constantly, and it's the same. It's the same. And so for my life, I work with great boards of directors. Most of my career comes from the nonprofit world. And I work with ensembles that are auditioned, high professional level, down through community level, no auditioned, but they all have really healthy boards of directors who guide the organization, who um, do a lot of work, not just in meetings, but in action as well. And but even with them, they're a rotating group of people. So every couple of years, I'm having to re-explain why I need a cost of living adjustment. I'm having to re-explain like why it costs so much money to put on a performance with an orchestra, or why we should be paying instrumentalists, a minimum of $75 per gig, or per hour per gig, versus what it used to be a few years ago, because the budget says that it used to be $50. Well, with inflation, like, this is what a fair rate is. And so like you're always advocating for yourself and for the art that you want to do. And so my job with them is to dream this big, and they say, okay, well, our budget can afford this big. And so we work on, that kind of stuff. But it's, this interview is about, one's own success and striving for, a life in music. And so I'll try to.
Dustin, as a musician, maybe someone that's in one of the ensembles that you're speaking on behalf of and negotiating for, you know what? I mean, having someone like that doing that on their behalf, I just think that must mean the world to them, to be honest with you.
There's a lot of conductors that I've talked with. A lot of us know each other. It's not a huge world, uh, and a lot of them really struggle with that. I think a lot of musicians, not to over stereotype, but I think a lot of musicians really struggle with self-advocation. And
Yeah.
so that's it. First of all, if you're somebody who's struggling with that, you're in the right place. Like, you're a normal person. So don't beat yourself up about that, because I was not always really great at it. And then I realized if I want to have a steak once in a year for dinner and pay off my student loans, like, somebody has to speak up for me. And there isn't anybody else who understands as much about what I do as myself. And so I got better at it over time. But it was not, and it still feels very unnatural, because
Yeah.
I'm asking these people whom I direct and am their leader, but I also work for this board of directors. And so it's this sort of symbiosis of relationship, but I'm also trying to just educate and explain, here's the going rate. By the way, I've worked for you for 12 years, like, so let's take that into account. And so there's a gracious way, an authentic way to have those tough conversations. And, it's okay to feel awkward once in a while when you have to talk about money, but if you don't talk about it, nobody else is going to. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And as you were saying, I can imagine at first you may even have like imposter syndrome, when you're just getting started. And it's probably totally uncomfortable negotiating on your own behalf, and you're not used to it. And I don't think that we're naturally built to do that kind of thing. But what you said is that you really just had to. Like, there was a point when you didn't, like, you were either going to make it in the world or you weren't. You know what I mean? And if you didn't negotiate for yourself, then clearly nobody else would. And that was that. So it kind of like forces the issue, I'd say.
Yeah. And a lot of it is, there's two sides to negotiation. It's not all just about what I can, should be receiving. It's about what I can give. And in the music world, there's always somebody better than you.
Yeah.
There's always, and it's not a scale. Like, there's just not a graph or a scale of like, okay, well, I'm better than 70% of people like, it doesn't work that way. There's so many dimensions of being a good musician. And some of it depends on, yes, are you a sound engineer? Are you an instrumentalist? Are you a conductor? But some of it is even within the same field. Like, I might excel at the rhythmic aspect of it, whereas somebody else might have a better vocabulary in their teaching. And so, like, you have to remove comparison with others completely because there's always somebody who's going to appear, talking of imposter syndrome, there's always going to seem like there's somebody who's doing better at something than you. Like I remember going to Jazz Alley once and seeing this incredible piano player who just blew my mind. She blew my mind of music. Um, and I remember leaving there thinking, why am I a musician? Why am I pretending my whole life to be a good musician when this person with just their left hand pinky finger had more music come out than I've had my whole career? And so, comparison is the thief of joy, especially when it comes to artists. But the one thing that you can compare yourself to is your own progress. And so not only advocating for yourself, but also explaining, knowing yourself well enough that you can explain to your bosses or whatever, whoever's paying you, what you can offer and what you're growing in and some of the risks that you want to take with that group together because you want to do something great together. And if you can get everybody to buy in, then it's not you versus them. It's you're leading from the middle of that group of people.
Well, yeah, it's like you said. I mean, everyone has different kinds of talents and things that they bring to the table.
Mhm.
So for you, conducting, as you said, it's exactly where your heart is, right? And ensemble. Well, that is something that you're brilliant with. I've seen it and experienced it firsthand. Obviously, the church band is a different scenario, but I've seen the difference between, for example, when we're playing with you leading as compared to other church bands that I've been involved with, like your leadership, I mean, Dustin, it's just different.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
it's definitely one of your many talents. Like, not only can you get behind a drum set and rock it out whenever you want to, you know what I mean? But you definitely know how to, you just know how to get the group to be totally cohesive in that setting.
I think that's what helps me excel is that one of my, honest to God, one of my favorite things is helping and explaining in very quick time and shaping other people. So like, conducting is a more direct way of shaping the sound in a live sort of situation. But in the teaching and in the rehearsal, um, that's I think that's my favorite gift is to be able to say, here's what I heard. So being a sounding board for them, like this is what I hear you doing. I think a good shape of this phrase is like this, and all you have to do is just lift your soft palate or whatever to sing this line and sing this phrase. Why don't you try that? Let's try that together. And like
Mm.
it's not about me as a conductor. It's about me being a sounding board. It's about me. And it's the same at the church. It's the same when I'm conducting an orchestra or a choir. It's here's what I heard. I'm analyzing it in real time. If I do this differently, sometimes you don't have to say anything. In fact, it's often better if you don't say anything and I just change what I do. I'm going to get the result. So it's always self-critiquing and always going, I did not show that very well. What can I do I can get a better result out of you. I can show you better things. But yeah, my favorite thing is helping people be their best musician, right? Like I'm an okay drummer. I'm an okay guitar player. There are millions and millions of players way better than me. Um, I'm a decent singer. I'm not the best. I sing with this incredible group in Seattle called Choral Arts Northwest. And 99% of the time, I feel like an imposter in that group because these are like professional, incredible singers, the kindest people you've ever met, with just these amazing voices. And some of them have incredible pitch and they're so disciplined and they can read music so much better than me. And um,
Wow.
like, but I'm in that group because it's important to surround yourself with musicians that are better than you. Like
Yeah.
iron sharpens iron, and um,
Yep.
we have a lot of fun. And I love working with that director. That's something else I think is really important is whatever your craft is, whatever your instrument is, like don't stop being a student. That's one of the things that's great about you, Kevin, is like you love learning. You love new technologies or new concepts of things. And so, me getting to be a singer, I put myself through all of the things that I put my singers through. I'm singing under a conductor who's at the head of his field, incredible, incredible guy. And I watch him teach, and some of his pedagogy works for me and some of it doesn't. But always being thinking, okay, how can I better myself for the people that I work with and for?
Okay, so I have to take a quick step back because I don't want to forget to ask you about something.
Okay.
We were talking about the hustle of everything and how you're always kind of making sure that you've got, something lined up and you're negotiating for yourself. So, my question is, how do you prioritize the different kinds of work? Like maybe a couple different opportunities come at one time, for example. Like, I guess the question is, how do you figure out how to prioritize which opportunity to even focus on?
I think my answer is different now than what it used to be. And like just being honest, and I'm not super proud of it, but in the past, I would say whatever paid better,
Yeah,
like to just to be real. And maybe that was a short term pay better, or like, oh, this has the most potential to become a career or a long term gig, or they're going to call me back more. I think that always influenced me, more. Um, and now I have the benefit of just being more stable in that realm. And so it's honestly more about like which has the people that I want to work with the more, or more, that's bad English, but yeah, which group do I want to work with more? Which group is hungry for better music? Um, which group is just authentically a better group of people, who love to be together. I am so lucky to be where I'm at now. The three ensembles that I work for on a regular basis are chock full of people who want to be better every week. They're chock full of people like every single one of them I could honestly sit down and have a meal with if I had time and have great conversation with. Um, they're blooming communities of, and some of them are different on the political spectrum, percentage wise. But they're all full of people who really honestly care about humanity and the common bonds of humanity and things that bring us together. And I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that ensemble work
yeah.
is the key to healing and the growth
Wow.
in the world. So yeah, now it's not as much of a thing for me now. I love, again, I have a lot of favorite things that I get to do in my life. And I love showing up, getting called in to do adjudications for festivals, choir festivals. I used to do a lot of band ones. I don't do as much of those anymore, um, but every once in a while I'm like, gosh, it's heavy concert season. I have to say no to this one. I have learned since the pandemic, I think a lot of people have, how to be better at saying no, thank you, but I really appreciate you considering me. Um, because
Yeah, I know what you mean.
when I decided that music was going to be my career, I made the choice that I was not going to make a lot of money in my life. But I wanted the quality of life more so. And as I get older, that's an easier answer because I go, oh man, I could either go and do this extra job or I could play in this pickleball tournament that's happening the same weekend. Right. Um,
Exactly.
and I sometimes have a hard time making that decision about what it is. But just different priorities shift as we get older, as our family develops, as our context is constantly changing. And so I don't think there's a flat answer of how to prioritize, but just following your gut, following your heart of like,
Yeah, that's fair.
what's motivating you. If your goal right now in your career is to be more networking and to grow, then you have to ask yourself the question, am I going to be good at this gig that's being offered me? I had a teacher once who said, never show what you're bad at. And I think there's some truth to that. I don't know. Sometimes being vulnerable is a really good thing, but um, musically speaking, like I can play the flute. I don't play the flute. You know what I mean? Like at home, if I want to like bust it out and like practice something, or like there's a flute line that I want to understand better in a score that we're doing for a show, I'll play through it. but I'll never play that in front of people because I'd rather them just assume that I could play it. You know what I mean? And so I think there's some aspect of, you know, being successful is your best networking tool, making sure that you can do the job without being a butthead and doing it really well, performing it really well and exactly the way that whoever the director is looking for it. Um, that's your best networking thing. So that's the priority is like what can you be best at and what's going to be the most bang for your buck.
I think you've just answered a question that I had in mind to ask you, which is this. How do you keep your job from being just a job? Like, how do you make sure that it stays fulfilling? And especially if you said that relationships are everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I just worry sometimes, like in a creative field that we're in, I would hate for it to ever get stagnant. And I've heard stories of artists who maybe they find themselves in commercial work and then they fall out of love with it. You know what I mean when I say that?
Totally.
So, how do you keep it fulfilling for yourself?
It's a really great question. And again, it's something I think is different for everybody else. I will say that I did find when music, after about a year of music being a full-time job for me,
Hmm.
it did not fill the same need or void in my life as a hobby or as an art form or whatever. And so you have to realize that if you want a career in music, it is becoming commercial. That's the definition of professional music, right? You're somebody who's getting paid to do it. You are selling yourself and your music. It's no longer a one audience thing. You're now selling yourself. So you can't have the hypocrisy of, oh, well, like I've fallen out of love with it because it's just a job now. Yeah, you chose to make it a job. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too in that situation. The biggest thing that helped me is finding other things that were fun and hobby like that other passions I could fall in love with. So like for me, woodworking has been a big part of it. And then gardening and garden season. And then as I've gotten a little bit older and stuff too, like taking care of our house, doing remodel projects. I found I love because music is so ethereal and like maybe you get a good recording out of something that's as close to tangibility as you can get. But with woodworking and projects and culinary or gardening, you have something to look at or to like see or hold or touch or taste.
Right.
And it's just so much more tangible and rewarding than I think music has been for me. Because music's like, we did a performance. Man, that was great. Was it okay? Does my art mean anything to anybody? Oh, well, here comes the next project, right? Like, and so there's not as much affirmation, whether external or internal, when it comes to music. And so you have to be okay with moving on. You have to put that project, be done with it, and never go back to it and just say, that's okay. I'm going to grow from it. There's some things I would do differently, and I will on the next project.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize that if you choose music to become your work, it's your work.
Right.
But the best thing about it is, I think 2 days a year on average, am I like, oh man, I really don't want to go to work today.
Nice.
And that is, I'm trying not to swear on this interview. That's really freaking lucky. Like you've got an incredible life. If you think, the average person spends a third of their work week, 8 hours a day doing their work. And so if you're lucky enough for that to be in something creative or something that you even have a little bit of joy in, I think the world would be an incredible place if everybody got to work in a field that they loved. I have this vivid memory of being a kid growing up in Southern California, and the garbage man came by. And I was at that age of like, people are always asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or like, what are you going to study in school? And I remember talking with this garbage man. I had just finished drinking a can of Mountain Dew, and it was the recycling guy was coming by, and I was like, I just finished it, and he'd emptied the bin. And I don't know, as a kid, I was just like, oh, here, take this one too. And I ran out to him. He stopped the truck, he pulled over, and he got out, and he was just so excited about his job. He's like, oh, thanks, man. And just the kindest. And I remember like asking him, I was like, do you love what you do, don't you? And he was like, absolutely. I don't have to be sitting in a cubicle, which for him was like the nightmare. He's like, I get to be outside all the time and I get to drive around and I'm doing something that needs to be done in the world. And I just thought, man, if this garbage man is like the happiest person, imagine if everybody in a job got to be happy. And not to say that it's all hugs and clouds and puppies, but like it's because there's times where it's work and you're like, oh, that didn't go well. It's any craft that's worth doing is worth struggling through. But um,
Absolutely.
if you can a majority of the time love what you do, then that's contagious. That's infectious. And the people you work with, and then the people who are watching you work are like their lives are augmented. And if we're all doing that, oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, if there's a young person watching this, they're probably feeling pretty gosh darn inspired right now.
I hope so. I don't know. I was so inspired by people who were passionate and joyful.
I mean,
Like,
I'm all pumped up right now. You know what I'm saying?
don't get me wrong, like there's hard times, there's hard conversations, there's growth moments.
Sure.
I've been reprimanded for doing stupid things in my life, and I am very lucky to still have the jobs that I have. Um, and but at the end of the day, it's like the passion of what I get to do. I feel literally, no exaggeration, when I wake up in the morning, if I have work to do, I'm like, man, I can't believe I get paid to do this. And I've worked hard to get here, yeah, but like how many people in the world wake up at some ungodly hour in the morning to go to a job that they hate? So if you even have a part-time job or a paying gig, like don't forget, let that drive you, let that make your music better, let that make your art better. Is like, you deserve to be paid for it. And somebody is affirming that. Somebody, whether it's a restaurant or an organization, like if you're getting paid to do something, be thankful and like let that honor of that shine through your music.
Yeah, man. So, well, if there are people who are watching this, maybe they're a little bit younger or thinking about a career in music, for example, or just, I don't know, exploring career opportunities. I want to know, what would you say, like, what are some potential revenue streams for musicians today, or for people that may be thinking about, going down that path? What would you say are some of the challenges to making a career in music? Obviously, you've shared a little bit about how you're always hustling and negotiating for yourself, and there's stress there where it's not a stable, like 9 to 5 kind of a job. You're not in a cubicle all day, but, you know, as you said, there's also a lot of reward, which you've described, that comes with it. So for someone who's just getting started, maybe they're thinking about a career in music, maybe, I don't know, gigging here and there, still just holding another type of a job on the side, maybe considering like what type of a school to go to or what type of a degree to pursue. You know, do you feel there's still good opportunities for musicians in terms of revenue streams and work, or do you have any advice about, what kind of career path may be more successful?
Yeah. I I have so many answers. I'm trying to think of where to start. First of all, I think education is super important. Um, Education is also a great time to network, which of course I say like be willing to move far away. So you leave your network basically when you graduate if you're willing to go where the work is. But I still have a lot of those connections and talk with my professors and go to their gigs once in a while or they come to mine, and it's really a cool relationship. But the amount that I've learned from people who know so much more than me is huge. And so maybe like, and I wish sometimes that um and I'm envious of friends and colleagues who went to universities outside of the United States, because they are from different countries where education was not expensive. And
I see what you mean.
but I have never met a single person who has an undergrad or a graduate degree or a doctorate that regrets it. Um, they regret the student loans aspect of it, and maybe there's some things you can do differently, but education's expensive. Um, but hey, you're already choosing a career in music, so you're already not going to make a lot of money. But be smarter with music, with money than I was as an 18-year-old going into college and not knowing what interest rates were because, you know, I I learned silly things in high school instead of what interest rates are and more practical things. But um, I think educate if you are somebody, maybe college isn't the right answer, but maybe the old school tradition of apprenticeship, like internships, or even just taking lessons in a certain thing. Like I've got really great composer friends who are, you know, some of them could be full-time composers if they wanted to, which is a lot more work and stuff, but they're just incredible. Um, and even some of the best ones that I know, they still study with other composers. And just like you love lifelong learning, I think you're never done learning. If the moment you're done learning, I think your music shows because we've heard it and it's not new. It's not anything inspiring. It's, if that kind of is what feels like selling out to me, because it's not create, you're not no longer creating, you're recalling something else, which, once in a while is fine. But
Yeah.
anything in the natural world, think of trees or gardens or whatever, if it's not in an active state of growing, whether above ground or below ground in the wintertime, then it's dead. Like there is no like survival mode for the natural things. Like your body's either growing actively or, working on something, or it's dead. And so like always be feeding yourself as a musician or a sound engineer or artist of any kind, any sort of creative. So like when I was going to school, all the talk was about like recordings. Like, if you want to make money as a musician, when I was younger, it was like get signed. Like that's where it's at. Well, then we learned a lot. Like, just look at Taylor Swift's life, and like that's on a magnified scale, but that's what that industry is still like. You cannot make money with recordings unless you're like mass producing them. The majority of people are going to make. So I have this friend, you've met Josh. Um, he makes what are called residuals. He spent about a decade down in LA, and he has sung on every major motion picture that you have seen in the last 10 years, 15 years. If there's any sort of vocal part in it, Josh has probably been a part of it. Really super cool. He's met the most world famous musicians and had great experiences. But 10 years and all of those residuals for those recordings and of movies and film and stuff aren't enough to pay bills. And that's like at the top of success. So again, unless you're that 0.00001% of people who are like famous selling multi-platinum records,
Yeah.
you're not going to make enough money to live off of. Is it nice to have some passive income? Totally. But is it worth the attention you have to put into it right now? My opinion, especially with the development of technologies and in entering the world of AI, my opinion is that the music growth, the financial growth, the networking growth, and what most people are hungry for are live performances, are live experiences. And so, and worst case, if you're focusing on them, if you still are doing a lot of mechanical things, like recordings or YouTube videos or the like, you're only going to grow your audience if you put some energy into live performances. But, in my experience, most instrumentalists and most tech people, whether audio or video, most of that money stream is happening in some sort of live performance. And maybe it's a live digital streaming performance, but some sort of live atmosphere. You think of them in tech people of concerts, tech people of churches.
Right.
It's all very little money is made for them in the studio only realm.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Your consumers and your audiences move on so quickly. We're constantly inundated I don't listen to the radio very much anymore. I don't listen to album stuff when I'm driving because I'm so overwhelmed. My brain is so tired of listening to. I need like an hour's drive of quiet time most of the time, or audio. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. But there's just so much of it. I think we've gone away from that. It's a supply and demand concept, right? There's so much of it that it's not an expensive thing. So therefore, it's not a way to make money.
Yeah, I mean, I've quoted this in other videos that I've produced. There's something like 120,000 songs getting
Yeah.
uploaded to platforms like Spotify every day. I mean, published, produced, and sent to Spotify.
Right. And so say, that's take that statistic and say that you're an average in there, right? So there's still over 50,000 other choices besides yours every day. And that's if you're creating something every day. So the odds of you being successful on that grand scale, I think is like, it's like trying to hit a target in the ocean. And so I think focusing on a smaller area that loves live performances or live church services or whatever is your cup of tea, whatever your forte is. If you're a guitar player who likes to just, your art is sitting and practicing your guitar and that's your love for it, and you're trying to transition into making money on being a, musician or some sort of creative, like use what you're good at and find other people who are looking for what you're good at. And sometimes it's just research, sometimes it's having conversations, sometimes it's several rejection applications. I think you just have to just keep trying to involve other people. I don't know personally any successful creatives who are solo people. There are some painters and artists, but I think even them that I know that I've talked to, they would not call themselves financially successful as a painter or an artist or a sculptor or whatever it is, even though they get to do their craft kind of just by themselves. It's when they participate with an organization or a museum or a curator or whatever to do a special project that they're able to, financially sustain themselves for a bit. So yeah, involve people. That's
Yeah.
as my biggest suggestion to anybody who's trying to break through into the creative world of being a full-time creative is, yeah, and surround yourself with people who are either already doing it or looking to do it.
I mean, I think there's a balance between, like, on the one hand, a little bit of doom and gloom about the industry. And then on the other hand, actually, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities, but it's important to be
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah.
If I hear you correctly, have an open mind.
Yeah.
Be willing to take opportunities when they come. Be willing to try something you hadn't expected, maybe.
Yeah. And be willing to go somewhere else
Right.
if where you live, what you're looking for doesn't exist, and the thought of you having to be the person to create it in that area sounds daunting, then you have to move. You have to go somewhere where there's an art scene, where there's culture, where there's people who are hungry for the finer things in life.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you just one other thing, which is, do you have anything that you would actually like to promote or give a shout out to? I mean, any concerts coming up or shows that folks can check out here?
So I'm at the quiet time of my year. So all my groups are done rehearsing and performing for their seasons. They'll start up again at the beginning of September or late August, depending on the project. But I would love to promote my groups, and I would just say, no matter where you are, wherever you're watching this, if there is a local ensemble, even if it's not something that is like, that's what my career is, it's such a great way where creatives are already naturally getting together to work on something that's greater than themselves. And so, and you might enjoy it, hopefully you enjoy it, but like, go join an orchestra or a choir, or go join a group of collectives. Like there's this community wood shop that exists in a lot of cities too, where it's like some company owns this big warehouse full of, table saws and all that stuff. But like this group of people get together and rent out a little space in there and work on projects and stuff together because there's just something so natural about growth. Um, it's like trees growing together, right? Like it's better together. Yeah.
That was an amazing answer. I'm literally going to go and watch some live music this week.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Go watch live music. Go, um, yeah, if you're in the Washington State area, like you are in the wealth of live. We not only bring in like big names to places, in Seattle, and it doesn't matter if it's musical theater, if it's orchestral, or if it's whatever your cup of tea is, or try something, different. But if you're in the Washington State area, like you've just got so many options. You have no reason. Doesn't matter what city you live in. I've been on the east side of the mountains and west side, and there is arts and good art everywhere. And yeah, if you're into choral singing or orchestral stuff, come check out. If you're up in Bellingham, come to the Colshan Chorus concerts. If you're in Skagit Valley, check out Cantabile. And if you're in the Edmonds area or Seattle area, you could come and sing with me at Snow King Chorale. And or if you're just a really great um, musician, I hire weird, abstract artists. We've hired throat singers. I've hired dancers for performances. If you're really good at what you do, reach out. And even if I might not be able to, use your particular craft, I bet there's somebody I could think of that would love to get to know you. So if you just need help networking or something, I would be honored to try to help you plug in with somebody else.
Well, I'll definitely put links to those things in the description. That way people can get involved if they feel it might be a cool opportunity.
I love that. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah.
Right on. Well, Dustin, thank you, man. I mean, I took a big chunk of your time.
No worries.
I learned a lot about you too. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for doing this with me.
Yeah. Thanks for asking me. I was super honored. I'm glad our schedules could finally align.